Let's talk about Axis and me. Welcome, everybody, to the Creed of Crypto live stream. My name is Broke Boy Crypto. I have here with me, as always, my friend and co-host Crypto Ewok, and a special guest this evening. I don't know, maybe his fifth appearance, something like that at this point. We're losing track. But Axis alive here with us, and we definitely have a very alive evening. He just mentioned it off air. Bitcoin up to about 95K earlier today. We got the PulseChain ecosystem pumping. Basically, everything's looking good other than like Ethereum, which we'll probably get to and a lot more. But we appreciate all you guys being here. Hit us up in the chat. We are talking about a lot of stuff tonight, but primarily HEX has been pumping. A lot of people are not fans of buying eHEX. Some people wonder why that is even an issue, and the ratio is just absolutely insane right now. And I mean, I think a pretty good opportunity to buy eHEX, but some people might give me death threats for saying that. So we'll see. We'll get into all of that juicy stuff with Axis and a lot more. Welcome in, guys. Billy Slime, I love your name. Metastang, Red Squirrel, what's up, man? Valiant Low Key here as always. Hexican Army, Mike Crypt, and a lot more. So smash the like on your way in to support the channel, support real DeFi. We appreciate you guys. Axis, man, you've been on it. You're ubiquitous. I saw you were on like a Joe Rogan-sized podcast with Money Gang Crypto yesterday. So welcome in. I hope your voice holds up for us. But how are you feeling tonight, man?
I'm feeling pretty bullish on this ecosystem, bullish on the whole market, really. I mean, I don't think we've gotten together since the election. Kind of results came in, and so that's boding quite well. I mean, look at everything's going up to the moon. Pretty soon, we're going to each own our own planet in the solar system.
That's right.
That's why I have exhibit A.
That's a beautiful set. I think your whole backdrop's changed. Like, I don't remember all that art from before. I love it. With the Axis stuff and everything. I love that.
Yeah,
you weren't paying attention.
Maybe I wasn't. Maybe I was zoned out. But yeah,
used to have the big HEX flag up there.
Yeah, that's what
now I just got the HEX poster in the back.
There you go. Yeah,
so I got the shield right here. I'd like to get that in the frame somehow, but
yeah,
running out of room.
Well, as long as I don't get planet Pluto or moon Pluto or whatever it is. I don't know what we're calling it these days. But yeah, we're all going to have our own moon by the time this damn thing's over. So things are feeling really good. And you're right. We haven't talked since the election. Boy, it maybe seems like a weird place to start off. But I mean, like, maybe we could just start there real quick, since it is kind of like partially the short-term sentiment and why we're seeing everything pop off so much. Partially is because of the bullish election results and everything that Trump has been saying, the people that he's been assigning to his cabinet and things like that. Not getting political on the show, of course. I mean, we're really a one-issue political show, if anything. And, you know, it's not our fault that the politicians had to turn it partisan, and the party that's not been attacking it is the one that won. So we'll get into, obviously, charts and stuff like that. But Axis, just your thoughts. I'm curious on Trump winning the election, some of the price action and stuff we've seen from it so far, but just how this was one of those like major catalysts. I mean, we think we're getting a bull cycle no matter what, but this is a big catalyst, at least in the short term. So what have your thoughts been on that so far?
So if you remember, we were on, I think back in, maybe it was April, May, and Bitcoin had started downtrending. And I said that what the perfect situation would be was we'd trend sideways for 6 to 8 months. And here we are about that amount of time later, and leading into that elections. And, you know, the markets responded fiercely and violently. If we're looking at Bitcoin, Dogecoin, with the stuff going on with Gary getting pressured out now from the SEC, that kind of boded well for XRP. Now XRP is making ridiculous moves. Cardano. So yeah, a lot of the altcoins that you'd expect to be, you know, main movers have started to move. And that's all as a result of, you know, kind of some of the changes that are coming for the US regulatory landscape. And I like that. I'd like to see that the price action respects that too.
Yeah, good for a change. I mean, you know, we haven't seen that type of administration really at all since I mean, even Trump's first administration, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of talk about crypto stuff. So it is good to see that. It's good to see the changing of the guards at the SEC, because now, you know, the past couple of years they've been throwing a case at anything that walks, basically. So that'll be a good change to see too, and I am glad that the market is respecting it. It's very refreshing to say.
I even remember Trump actually came out and spoke out against Bitcoin, and that they actually had to launch the the CME futures contracts in order to stop Bitcoin from just going up forever. If anything, the economy was quite good during his first term.
Yeah.
And, all the markets respected that, and Bitcoin especially, it went from like the $150 low to like $20,000 nearly.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think the market feels the same this time. I think, but now you're actually getting him to acknowledge it and come speak at Bitcoin conferences, and
Right.
so I mean, it really is. It's nice, and then at the same time, a lot of the things that have been holding us back as an industry those gates are falling down. So I mean, it's really just a perfect setup. And I remember, in regards to more of the macro, like I remember the dollar index at that time, after he had been elected, it had this huge rally, and then the DXY kind of just chopped up and down, and it just glided up like this for, I want to say, like 2 years. And I got the chart here, and then it wasn't until the pandemic fears, where there was this huge volatility wick in both directions on the dollar, and that's when it croaked, and it was in the face of all that money printing that happened, and that's when Bitcoin got its big surge, and the bull market really kicked up. Was in March and April of 2020.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So just to finish that point, the DXY now has done that similar move on the president's election, and it basically, what happened was, there was a huge crash, it went sideways, and then it rallied all the way back up, made this big V bottom. And we're at the top right now, testing resistance on that chart.
Do you want to pull the chart up?
Yeah, I might as well. It's worth seeing. I mean, if you can see the visual, it really does improve the example. So here it is. This is the point I'm talking about right here. This was back in December of 2017. And then this was the 18, and this was the bear market. So keep this in mind, I guess. So Trump, I don't know. Trump gets elected in 16, right? Somewhere in here. Was it? Did he get into office in 16? No, he
would have been early 17.
17,
yeah.
but
so
November would have been the election.
So Bitcoin starts bottoming like in this zone when the DXY is kind of in this sort of a pattern. And then this is January of 17. This is the Bitcoin bull run. And this is the end of the Bitcoin bull run here, where the dollar kind of stops and goes sideways. And then, Trump's in office now. This is the beginning of 18. This is the dollar doing this move here. And this is where I believe we're at now. So I believe we are at this potential period now and it could go longer. Ben Cohen says, next year that the dollar will roll over. So it'll do this, and then it'll roll over, which means our bull market continues faster, and stocks and crypto goes up faster. But right now everything's climbing in a strong dollar environment as well. And I think we've saw like the bond market's kind of corrected now a little bit. It's looks like a normal, healthy bond market, which is good. But so yeah, this is the setup that we have going into this. And I don't know. I think that the bull market cycle is going to be extended, just like I've been saying, 2026.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to be on the back of something like this, where the dollar's just going to be strong for a while, because we're going to have a strong economy, and then eventually it'll lead into an even bigger wave for crypto, if you can imagine. Like we'll go up, but we're really going to go up when this period happens. Timing that's going to be fun.
Yeah, fun or stressful, one of the two. Figuring out what to do. You just led me exactly to where I wanted to go with this, actually. So I'm not sure if you saw this, and I don't know how often I know you're aware of him, I'm sure, but watch or listen to Bob Lucas's content. Obviously he talks about the Bitcoin 60-day cycles. It was really interesting because, as you just mentioned, I mean, you have been one of these people that's been talking about more of a super cycle getting into that first quarter of 2026, potentially over 200K Bitcoin, all these, uber bullish things based on everything that you just laid out right there. I heard you just the other day continue to talk about it with Corey Costa too. But I just watched Bob Lucas's video that he uploaded today. And he, especially I was saying to Ewok off the air, for somebody who's like kind of not a trader, but like a swing or longer term trader, could not have sounded more bullish, talking about all the things about, crypto in the White House, as we just mentioned, all the institutional money coming in as a catalyst for this. Mm-hmm. He talked about, that 125K BTC spot is like where you would think we would get to only with the normal diminishing returns over the last couple cycles from what you see. But I mean, he seemed like a staunch believer in this possibility of the super cycle heading into possibly 2026, like you just said. And it sounded like prices into the 200,000. So he was like uber bullish on this being just a massive, massive cycle, mainly because of all these major players and everything like that getting in. So I would just like your thoughts on that, and kind of even more specifically how you kind of see this thing panning out and how much of it does have to do with the major players coming in now. Because, I mean, just today, Robert Kiyosaki is somebody that's always been kind of interested in Bitcoin, but more so gold, silver, stuff like that. But me and Ewok were talking. I saw him on there doing the whole kind of boomer take of like, I agree with Michael Saylor, Bitcoin to 13 million and all this shit. Like, you only need 0.01 Bitcoin and you'll be a millionaire tomorrow. And I'm like, all right, dude, like you haven't even been talking about this stuff. And now suddenly you're spewing this stuff. But anyway, yeah, I'm curious your thoughts on this though.
Higher for longer, and it's going to be painful for the bears. There's so much money coming into this space, and I mean, one of the things that you can consider is, why would a BlackRock or MicroStrategy sell any Bitcoin at this rate, unless it was literally to a government that can print an infinite amount of dollars, and even then, they would rather silo them into their own paper products and make money on that, and just use the Bitcoin as collateral. It's like, I think Bitcoin is going to become like the most pristine collateral during the next, but it could go longer. It could go longer than most of us believe is possible, on the back of things like, the crypto market on its own and the innovations to come, and AI and new energy technologies. And the list goes on of possible efficiencies that's going to come to the marketplace. And all that is going to kind of collide and send us toward, Kurzweil's singularity. I really do believe that. So that's my fundamental feeling on what's happening, where the world, gets hyper Bitcoinized and revalues itself in Satoshis. And I've always been a Bitcoin bull and originally a Bitcoin miner. I made a change in 2019. It was like 2021, where I was like, okay, Richard Hart is creating a parallel path forward that is truly decentralized and has the capabilities of the growth levels that early Bitcoin had. And I didn't see that for a regular person like me to get enough Bitcoin in the middle term, meaning by like 2030 to 2035 range, to make the kind of money that we're going to be able to make in his DeFi ecosystem. And so, but rolling the conversation back a little bit, Bitcoin is definitely in demand in ways that we have never seen before. Record level volumes, ETF inflows, even ETH ETF inflows are now positive. The whole space is going to mature and evolve, and there's more than enough liquidity coming in now to service and remove the debt of the early retail driven Bitcoin cycles, which is why I kind of think we're moving away from the boom bust cycles, and we're going more into a infinite money printer, always constant buying of Bitcoin and Ethereum. Like, there's just going to be a forever bid there now, kind of like how, our parents might have used 401ks and stuff. Like, now Bitcoin is the new 401k. And so there's going to be a permanent bid on the price. And at the same time, some of the negative externalities of like mining costs, that's all being changed around, where in the early days, like when I was mining, Bitcoin was not yet proven. And so mining back here, we had to dump our Bitcoin in order to pay our electrical costs and equipment costs and whatnot. Whereas now, like, these guys are backing their Bitcoin mining facilities and their Bitcoin as collateral to take loans, to take on debt, to find investors. So the capital is coming from the fake fiat money printer to backstop, so that the most pristine collateral in the world, Bitcoin, can continue to go up and up and up like the S&P does these days. And so you've got a combination of factors where energy costs are going to come down tremendously. Mining efficiency is going to go through the roof. Bitcoin is more in demand than ever before. Nobody's going to want to sell it. And so, yeah, I mean, it's really the dream come true for any crypto enthusiast. You have to pay your respects to Bitcoin, although I do think there are better alternatives. This is where our liquidity is coming from. Bitcoin is the Trojan horse. And in these two examples here, I have the 2017 Bitcoin fractal in yellow, and then the gold one is the actual gold bull market after the gold ETF went live in 2003 or 2003, 2004. And so I condensed it down a bit, but I mean, this fractal does a good job of showing you what it could look like if Bitcoin just kind of grinds up into the right at like, 20% per annum for the next like 5 to 10 years. We could be at 300,000 by 2030. I mean, you could be seeing a high of, this is saying 190 by May of 26, and then we decline down to like 100 grand. So it's a 50% haircut. You're never going to see the 85% haircut on Bitcoin ever again. Mark my words, because there's a forever bid there.
Yeah.
You'd be lucky to get a 65% drop, and that's going to come at one of these types of moments where, it's still early. The world is still adopting Bitcoin, and it is going to go through potentially, if we don't get the slower growth curve, when we do actually get the 2017 style bull run for one last hurrah, these are where you're going to get your final 35%, crashes, 65% crashes is maybe on these kinds of moves off of one of the most crazy blow off tops we've seen since that we got robbed of last cycles that we've seen since back in 2017. What do you guys think?
Is that 2 million that you've got up there? 2,100,000 and
yeah, it's 2 million. And so do I think so? I don't want to go out on that kind of a limb. It's not really my
no
goal.
I couldn't
not for
read.
you.
I wasn't
For listeners, I want them to know that they can't clip that out and say, "Oh, Axel said it's going to 2 million."
Right.
Well, I'm
Somebody's
saying is that if it were to play out similarly to the previous cycle, like we're on track for 282, like I would say 240K by May or July of next year, if it just continues to climb. Now, would I like to see something different? Yes, and I can help make a case for, with like the indicators like the pi cycle top, for more sideways action mid-cycle like we had here. I would like to see this more and more. I would just like to do this, and I could do that for the next 10 years, and our altcoin assets are going to appreciate so much more,
right?
Because it's a sustained long-term growth trend, not where everyone has to get raped for fucking 4 years and then we have to try all over again. Because that was a matter of the early days of crypto, where it was a much smaller market. Remember, in the early days of Bitcoin, all the way back here, there might have been like 10 or 15,000 people trading this thing. Like, it was tiny. It's like this is the equivalent of where PulseChain is today. Is like trading with 15,000 active users, and it was able to go from a penny to $30, right? On the back of a few rich guys, and then it reset, and so but these resets, they're a natural, it's like a natural disaster occurring, that where the fire clears all the brush out of the forest, and then the forest regrows up from the ground up again, stronger. And that's what these cycles did. For naturally, you made people ultra wealthy who never had money like that in each one of these cycles. But now the tables have turned. The game is a lot different now, and the market has evolved, the metagame has evolved, and it's exciting to be a part of. Yeah.
So the theory that I was giving him before you got on, Axis, was that previously Bitcoin runs up, it does its top thing, and then about a month later, 28 days later, Ethereum makes its high. And then people sell out of that. They get into altcoins. It does its run. And then I have a feeling people are going to cycle back into Bitcoin because, to your point, we may not ever see an 80% drop again with it. It's a lot more stable way to preserve the wealth. So does that, in effect, continue a cycle, only maybe it just gets quicker? I think we could see a better accelerated cycle because of, like you said, the buy orders that are coming in, the constant buy pressure that all these markets that have right now with the ETFs and everything like that. So just a thought that it could really just accelerate the 4-year cycle considerably because of it.
And to that point, I think what you do here, if you're like a BlackRock or some large player, is you just liquidate people. So you just go sideways just long enough that you liquidate people through the macro conditions, and they just have to sell their Bitcoin to you at cheap prices, and then you mark it up, and then you do it again, and you liquidate people, and then you mark it up. And what this is it's a supply squeeze that can last years, over and over and over again. Where you just pay people off to get out of the asset so they can't dump it later, and then once all the collateral is held by, you know, somebody who doesn't have to sell, they can create their own products on top of it. And so that's honestly where this is going. Obviously, it was forecasted years ago. Now it's happening.
Well, don't we see that with MicroStrategy, the ticker on that, or the value of that, you know, each one is way overpriced right now from what I heard.
Yeah, here it is on the monthly. So yeah, it's at all-time highs. Let me go linear. That kind of puts it into perspective.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That's because their, you know, their strategy is sick. Like, you know, props to Michael Saylor. I don't know if you guys want to go into story time, but I was watching. So going back to Bitcoin for a sec, go down to maybe like a 3-day. That's probably enough resolution. This is when Michael Saylor got into Bitcoin, and I remember it specifically. Like, it's kind of sad how much I can remember charts, but can't remember what the hell my dog's name is. So like, I remember this smackdown from like 12K. It was like 12.5K was the top here, and it started this downtrend. And I was like, oh yeah, it's just going to do one of these. But I was leveraging on 50 and 100x leverage trades, and I remember this smackdown coming in, and I remember the bid support that came in right here, and I was like blown away. I was like, this is like, I can't even believe that this thing will not go down below 10K right now. I remember it would hit like 9.8, 9.813, 9.819, 9.83 or 9.983. But it created a floor there in a way that I hadn't seen that amount of support at that level at 10K. And then I think it was like somewhere in here, that's where Michael Saylor actually spoke out and said, like, yeah, I'm long Bitcoin in a big way. He personally bought in here at around 8-9K. And then he came in with MicroStrategy money here, I believe. And so I just like, good for him. I'm happy that he's probably one of the most, what's the word? When you listen to him talk about Bitcoin, it's like listening to your preacher talk about God, because
exactly
that's how much he believes in this as a religion, as a cult. It's pretty crazy. And I do think that he's got some points in there that Bitcoin is fixing the money problem. It was the first one. Now we can just hope that this stuff that we're in now can also solve really important monetary problems. And that's kind of why a lot of us got into HEX originally.
Well, how do you feel about the infinite loop, though, that they say that MicroStrategy can continue to sell shares to buy more Bitcoin so that the price goes up, so that they can sell more shares to buy? I mean, eventually that bubble will
burst.
It's got to burst at some point. And
that might be part of the reason why we get more of like a parabolic move versus just one of these. Is like, the more you go down that path, the more levered it becomes.
Right.
But that bull market can be irrational a lot longer than, Ponzi's go a long time.
Sure.
So, and I don't know what it's going to take to get, to liquidate them, or until they just decide they're going to sell Bitcoin for once. I don't know. There's got to be a target. I don't know. We're getting into some sticky topics there, but yeah, they can do that for some amount of time. I know Peter Schiff likes to call that out.
Right.
Be like, hey, this infinite money glitch shit sucks. Well, maybe, I don't know. What does that really mean? What is money? What is value?
So, so that's where we are with Bitcoin, unless you have anything else on it. I am curious. I mean, we've been talking about it every time you've been on now for months, and it's funny because literally like right now, when you were on only a month ago or so, but we've got Ethereum basically hitting another new low against BTC ratio-wise. Like every time BTC starts to pop up, obviously ETH has come up against USD since Bitcoin has started to pump, but we've seen it. This is really Bitcoin's time right now. I mean, it's time to shine here since the election over the last 3 weeks. We've seen it literally, and people forget because it's so short. I mean, it's gone up 20K in like 2 weeks. Which is insane. I mean, it hit a new all-time high barely, and now we're up to 95K. But ETH down to like 0.032, I think I saw at one point. Maybe it even still is right now on the ratio. So I'm curious what you're thinking here with ETH. It just, to me, I know we keep saying it till we're blue in the face, and it seems like you're psychotic at some point, but it's just like golden opportunity. I mean, like anybody that's been reaching out, talking about, because obviously, IRL friends and stuff will start reaching out to you, like, because you're the local crypto guy, and be asking about stuff. And for people with like maybe a low risk appetite, to me, I'm like, I mean, Ethereum is probably like the most cocksure buy you can make right now to, get at least modest gains compared to the rest of the crypto industry and feel guaranteed about it. So, yeah, what do you think? What do you think about our friend Ethereum right now?
Well, I think Ethereum is on Google Trends. It just topped out around that 20 level, which is the same place it was in March, which is when Richard bought. And before that, we hadn't been at that kind of a level since September, I think it was, of 2022. So it's been a long time for Ethereum. It's been out of the limelight for a while. Maybe it's some bad taste in people's mouths because they lost a lot of money on NFTs and they blame Ethereum for it or this or that. But that's all old. Like, that money's washed anyways, and the excitement's going to come back in a big way, and it's always around price action. I think that Ethereum is the most obvious contrarian play out there right now. And in terms of like performance, I mean, all you got to do is look at the freaking rainbow chart for Ethereum, and you'll see that it's holding up pretty damn good, better than Bitcoin. Even Bitcoin's down here in the blue bands. Let's see if I can find Ethereum here. ETH is in the middle of its band. So if you ran like a logarithmic curve on this, I mean, part of this is because ETH did not drop as low. So it's right dead nuts in the middle of its logarithmic band, sitting on top of it right now. So it's so healthy. ETH is so healthy. It's so useful. Infinite utility. DeFi built on it. Thousands of at least a dozen layer 2s worth of damn.
Yeah.
Layer 1s that can spread the load out. That's what we're doing. And then you look at what it's doing. It's in this massive pennant pattern. And these, when they break, they bust huge to the upside. And I don't know if we could maybe find a pennant in here. Maybe not. Let's see. I think there's one back in here. Maybe something like this. It was like a falling wedge. But when I look at this pattern, this pennant that's created, when these break out, what you do is you measure from like bottom to top, and then from the breakout point, measure up the same. So how many bands did I go up? 1, 2, 3, 4 bands. 1, 2, 3, 4 bands. So the breakout target for ETH is above 10,000. Here's 10,000 right here, just on this pattern. So I mean, it's going to get its day in the sun. I think one of the reasons why I'm so excited for it is because I see guys on Twitter capitulating and putting their ETH into Bitcoin now, while the ratios, and those are the guys that are sad on their bags, and they're pushing this down below this level.
Yeah,
that's totally fine. And honestly, patience is going to be the best play here for the Ethereum guys, because if it goes like this and Bitcoin just continues to grind up, eventually that alt season comes, and that's where your big move comes. And so I don't know, we're back below the 0.3, what is that, 0.35 level. If I just bars pattern this out and give us a time frame, it could look something like this, where we're testing this back up here in January of 2026. Imagine all of 2025, ETH hangs out around 3 to 5K, and Bitcoin just continues to climb. And then, or Bitcoin's climbing faster than ETH can grow against it. And, but eventually this is where that longer cycle kind of comes in, 26, and then early 27, it tops out. I mean, don't rule it out. I'm not going to say play it. I'm not going to say hang your hat on it, but consider that, Ethereum is a completely different asset than it was back here. This was a miner's asset back here. So it acted more like Bitcoin too. Now it's like deflationary and has all these different properties. It's a staker, it's a staking token, right? So ultrasound.money is a place that I like to go to look at supply and demand dynamics, like, go like on an all-time and see that since the merge, now ETH isn't bleeding 5 million Ethereum per year in inflation. It's actually been pretty much steady in terms of inflation. If I throw ETH proof of work on there, it would be total supply would be 129 million, but instead we're at 120 million flat. Bitcoin inflation is still increasing at an extra, percent, like 8.8% more than Ethereum is inflating right now. Matter of fact, Ethereum is not really inflating. Right. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, you would think that would be more bullish for Ethereum. I mean, with buy pressure, you're not getting that miner sell pressure that you had before, I thought it would have reacted differently.
Well, and I think it's just a matter of time, right? I don't think that maybe it just hasn't had enough time for that to play out. I mean, you got to think, how many miners had let's add up the global equipment costs. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars of equipment costs that had to get paid for. Well, that's why this is happening to Ethereum, is because all those miners that had equipment have to become made whole somehow. And so you're just kind of working through all that extra supply of Ethereum. And, as those mining companies move on to other ventures, like, I think that's part of what led into this extended downside on ETH. Once that's all kind of bottomed out, like we're not bottomed out yet. It's still, catching a falling knife against Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But against the dollar, super stable, super stable. As a matter of fact, it's holding up quite well.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's fair to compare ETH to Bitcoin at this point. But when this thing breaks, it's going to break in a big way. So let's just find a target. Let's say it breaks out, not too long from now, maybe sometime next year. That's your $8,000 target, easy, which turns the SAC money into like, over $1 billion.
Yeah.
And so then we could take it a step further. And I made a post about, if you take the original bars pattern from the very first cycle and I point out two peaks, and if that just plays out again, then we had our first peak last cycle, and the second. Oh, here's a Ben Cohen. I'll get to that. Ben Cohen, he's saying, like, ETH BTC bottoms potentially Q2 2024 when quantitative tightening ends, same as it did in 2019 and then in 2016. So every 4 years going into that new year, it's like that's where it's bottomed in the past. So I think Ben is pretty much on point. Have been following him for years, and he's always been the voice of reason.
Yeah.
But then when you look at this one, peak number 1, all the way back in 2017. Hold on a second. Let me get peak number 2, 2018. Peak number 1 was 2021. And so you can see how this pattern is playing out. It's just playing out across way more time.
Mm-hmm.
And so
on a bigger scale.
And on a much bigger scale, there's hundreds of valuable, if not thousands of valuable dApps on Ethereum now, which is a lot different, which is part of why the downside this cycle wasn't as bad for Ethereum. Back here, we went down like minus 95% or something crazy. The cycle, we didn't get that drawdown. As a matter of fact, it held up better in the bear market than Bitcoin did.
Yeah. I think it's something that a lot of people, and again, I mean, ETH looks so bad against BTC right now, but I think people do forget that. People were calling for $500 ETH, and we got maybe $850, $875 for a day, So,
it didn't last long. What about the ETFs for ETH? I mean,
positive inflows, according to Crypto Money Gang. Yeah.
Is it? Yeah, because I haven't seen any numbers. Like, I know it's not anything near what Bitcoin's getting, but you kind of wonder when they're going to shift, right? I mean, they're going to get what they need for their portfolio, and then they're possibly, I think, going to, switch over to Ethereum's ETF as well.
Yep, I'm with you on that. I am. I think it's just a matter of time, and I wonder if a lot of the Bitcoin money that's made in the future in this cycle is paper money that they never touched Bitcoin, they never used it, and so all of that Bitcoin gains is sitting on some centralized counterparty's ledger internally. And so when they rotate into Ethereum, if they're going from paper Bitcoin into paper ETH, that never hits the blockchain. And so there's no supply imbalance, but that actually opens up an avenue for the crypto OGs, like your Richard Hart, Justin Sun, and the big whale pods that are out there, to absorb all that supply and force the market to have to adapt to a changing supply and demand dynamic. So it actually opens up for the possibility of then, even if like organizations thought they had control of that whole game and to be able to stop the rotation, so to speak, it's impossible because of the on-chain reality of decentralized exchanges. So It's just a matter of time till that dam breaks. And I mean, this peak too, according to this projection, basically just taking these peaks and kind of timing them up with these little peaks here. I mean, you're looking at $17,000 ETH this cycle, and that's all the way out in 27, late 27. So now, do I have a crystal ball? No. Can I tell you with 100% certainty that's the price and that's the time? No. But generally, you can see that this pennant pattern is going to break up at some point with a low side target of 8,000, which means PulseChain guys, we're safe. We're good.
Yeah.
Verifiably, we're good.
That's the big thing that everybody wonders too. I mean, even the 8K is kind of like the paltry price for Ethereum that people have been rallying around. And yeah, you're right. That SAC wallet's going to have quite a bit of USD in it by that point. So a 2x off of that will definitely make a difference for sure.
Let's go ahead and take a look at the comments if you guys want.
Yeah, I had one here I want to ask you. So Ewok and I kind of alluded to this off the air. With the idea of like this violent super cycle that we could possibly see, like say late spring we hit 120K BTC, maybe we see something kind of repeating later in 2025, kind of like 2021, where we get back up to that 120K number again, we start to come back down and everybody's like, you know what, I know this trick, I've been here before, I'm not round tripping. And then we do get this just psychotic out of nowhere, seemingly, January to February 2026, it doubles its previous high or something like that. So Blind Royalty says, because I mean, that is something where like you kind of want to feel like you're planning for all scenarios, and we're still far enough away from it now that you can make moves during it. But he says, in the next bear, are you round tripping PulseX, Pulse Inc. and exploring HEX stakes and continuing to accumulate or selling near the top? That's actually not the one that I meant to do, but that is a similar question. It's basically just the concept of, I'm trying to find the actual one. Basically, how would you play that? Like if, you don't have to say it exactly, but here, this guy just said, I wouldn't bet all of my portfolio for a longer cycle into 2026. Like you wouldn't want to be, you don't want to be bag holding. So yeah, talk about that, like the different strategies, because we could see these violent upswings and you have no idea when it's, not no idea, but you may not know when it's truly, truly over. So how might you handle that?
So I personally will help you guys publicly for free. I will talk about the cycle theory and we'll look at different things like the Mayer multiple, for example, and the GRM and these tools, the pi cycle top indicator. These tools are very good at predicting or projecting out where the top's going to occur if it's a more traditional parabolic style move. Where's the GRM? Here it is. So we've showed this on here before. This is Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is still in chill mode. I think. Let me make sure this is the right date. Everything's up to date here. 11/21. Yeah. So I mean, Bitcoin, even though we're going vertical in price, we're still in chill mode. Bitcoin doesn't top until you hit the red line. And this is going back to like the 15 cycle here, and then 16, 18. So in terms of the GRM, which is the golden ratio multiplier, we're still, prices are healthy, and part of that was because we went sideways long enough here that we're still good. Now, when it comes to making decisions for your own portfolio, yeah, you should be comfortable taking profits as early as April or May of next year with maybe 10% or some amount. It doesn't have to be a specific time. I mean, my argument is, why aren't you always shifting in and out of assets, being a little more flexible and mobile? There's a certain skill to that, but you have to practice, because if you just wait till the very end of the cycle to try to sell, even if you're a profit maximalist and you're just trying to sell the very top of the swing trade across like a 4 or 5 year period, you're going to be sadly disappointed, and you're going to miss it. And then you're going to be like, you're going to miss the first 50% drop, and then you're going to sell, and then you're going to watch it go back up, and then you're going to get back in, and then you're going to watch it go down lower than your sell, and you're going to be like, what the? So you're going to get chopped up. And so the way you don't get chopped up is that you're setting market limit orders as the market's trending upward in the strong periods. And so you're improving your life slowly. You don't have to sell a bunch, just maybe 3%, 5% every few weeks, months. And then look, if you do that for all of next year, and now you've sold off 30% of your portfolio, and you see a big 50% drop and it starts to recover, well, you can come back in with 10%, and now you just bought like a local low. there's a trading element to that, but at least it gives you more optionality so that you're not always having to bring in fresh capital to you can just take it from a high and put it back in at a low. Over time, you could do that. You can cycle your money through that during the bull cycle. And so maybe that's not for everyone, but at a minimum, just strict profit taking. Yeah, you want to have limit orders or V3 positions as the prices are trending up, so you are getting made whole. Starting now, really. I mean, I know most of us are pretty hardcore and we're not going to want to sell yet, but it's okay if you're up, 2x on your pulse or something, or if you're up like 6x on your hex, to take a little bit off now. Even I'm not. That actually makes for a better bull market for everybody. If everybody takes a little bit off all the time and then comes back in and buys a little bit on the big dips, it just makes a more healthier rotation of money in and out of the thing. But back to the GRM, like, yeah, this is healthy. We're still low. This is just curving around. We're in similar areas as where we were back here in 2020 or back here in 2016, late 2016, before the 2017 blow off, before the 2021 top. Interestingly enough, this right here is the FTX double top on Bitcoin. Notice how this doesn't come all the way back up to here. It's because the real top was here where Richard called the top. Now, if I put the price chart on here, it'll probably become pretty clear. So turquoise line is price. You can see how the price interplays with the tops. Here's your second top. Here's your 2019 top. So what did we just have in Bitcoin? We had a mid-cycle sideways period, boom, boom. Why wouldn't that happen again? And make it longer? Potentially, right? If it goes up to here, fine. You're going to be prepared for that. That's normal. That's just what everyone expects. Oh, the cycle's over in May. Okay. You play it that way then.
Right.
You go play it that way then. I know I'm going to play it with a head on a swivel, ready to make moves as it comes.
I think that is the key, really, is the theme, and everything that you're saying is being adaptable no matter what. And the other thing is, you can't tell any one person what to do that'll make them like sleep better at night. So some people may just have to make their own decisions. Well, you are making your own decisions, but you're going to have to decide, okay, like things feel really frothy right now. Maybe I want to take out a little bit more than I am thinking, just so I can feel like I can sleep tonight. I mean, you have to make those calls for yourself. That's the same thing that goes for portfolio allocation, how you DCA in, DCAing out, kind of the same way. So yeah, not really a one size fits all.
And the one thing you also want to be careful of too is you talk about people taking little chunks of profit along the way and they start to see it go up. Be careful not to buy those tops, because if you end up buying a top and it goes back down, well, guess what? Now you've got to round trip it. So, there is something to be said for keeping some on the side as well, because inevitably, once it's up high enough, chances are you're going to get a lower entry price. If you just wait it out, you're sometimes better off than trying to play the ups and downs like that too.
Yeah. Well, with that, I think we should get into the PulseChain ecosystem here. Enough.
Well, here's another question that is kind of PulseChain, and Taylor asked, can Axis talk about the $400,000 Pulse buy today, barely moving the price? So that's our segue into what's going on.
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious. And Martin in Twitter, Martin Storyteller, aka Martin, came in there and was like, I used to get excited by that much money moving the price 10%. And that was a fun bull run. And it was like trading on really thin liquidity on HEX back in the day when it was just a baby. Now we're dealing with like a monster of an asset. We got an entire blockchain. And so, yeah, just imagine how this can build up now. Like, yeah, this is what we got today was a 5% candle. And I know it doesn't feel like a lot, but that really changes things for other assets that are bonded to it. Yeah. And so when Pulse moves 5%, for example, like the Axis token went up 10% because it's an amplifier for the things around it. So really, when you're buying Pulse, you're lifting up the entire chain, which is why people buy HEX, for example. You're pumping Pulse first, and then you're pumping HEX next. And so it's okay that it doesn't pump with a 400K buy, because eventually this nice, slow and steady growth that I keep talking about, that I am praising, is good for the long-term health and longevity of the blockchain. You want this slow growth so it gives everyone good prices all the way up until we really do get, $400,000 clips being unloaded every few seconds, like back to back to back to back to back. And you're just seeing that's where you're going to get this like crazy parabolic type movements. If you want to 4x the price, you only got to do is if you put this in a silo and compartmentalize this pool out of here, all you have to do is put 20 million bucks in here, and you 4x the pulse price would put you all the way up here near the all-time high. But with everything that's attached to it, it's actually more like a $250 million pool. So you'd actually have to put more like $125 million into the chain to 4x the price like that. Or it actually probably would go higher than that, because everything would start pumping around it, which would be amplifiers for everything pumping. So this is just like the engine starting to warm up, little buys coming in here and there, amplifying pumps here and there. And this is totally cool. I think it's awesome. I know some people are like impatient and want to see this overnight, but Pulse bottomed, guys, and it's up 100% in 78 days. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. We've talked about this a lot. Is good to see these sideways movements. It's accumulation. It's healthy. There's nothing wrong with it. And the people that are impatient, probably shouldn't be here in the first place, because they're not prepared, especially if they can't see a sideways movement. They're definitely not going to do well when the charts are going down. You know what I mean? So, this is super healthy. It looks good.
We can zoom out on like a 3-day here, and it'll really bring it into frame. On this trajectory right now, how long till SAC on this trajectory? January 1st, we're at SAC on this trajectory. And then you get down here to this trend line, and you're looking at, April, end of April, we're at SAC. Now, what do I think is going to happen? Somewhere in between.
Somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
I think we could hit SAC before the end of the year and try to flip that as support. And then the options are either go back to test, which is probably likely, knowing this community, which is fine. That's healthy. Or boom, we're going to go up and try to take out this local high from March. And then I think that's where we kind of start to struggle, unless we're getting new buyers and where we add like money to across the bridge and stuff. This is where we'll start to chop sideways for a while and try to do that next wave of consolidation. And that'll look kind of like what chart was that? The ton coin chart when it bottomed. And then when it hit the trend line, or when it got done flagging, it popped up hard, like really hard. And then it, corrected like this sort of thing. So this type of action all of next year would mean pretty good prices for everyone. I think everyone would be pretty happy, because if PulseChain is going to go do that, everything else is going to go up even more.
Oh yeah.
And that doesn't even include a case decision or whatever is possible thrown in there along the way.
And I think we can do this kind of action on our own without any adoption, like something like this, what ETH did back in 2014 and 2015. It's just something where we do make the 10x from the lows. Let's see. This would be like a 17x. And then you spend some time going sideways, just like HEX last cycle. Bringing new people in, old people exiting, creating a new baseline above the all-time high here. Just create some support. And then that's when the bull market even gets even more insane, and it does go longer. And then that's when you can get crazy stuff like this, where you're going to like penny level targets.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That would be a nice day.
What time frame is that? That looks like 2027 or something. Way out.
Yeah, this is the peak. This is January of 2027 for 3 cents. Now, again, guys, this part here, I'm not saying this is a promise. Sure. But what I am saying is
clip it, put it out.
Let's do this first, guys. Let's do this first. And then if we're seeing the metrics respecting that, and you're seeing good amounts of money coming into the chain, and ETH at like 8K, 12K, somewhere in there, that's where the support's going to come in to create a base, just like HEX did in 2020. And then potentially we can build up and go from there.
I have a question for you. So you just said, if Pulse goes up, if Pulse goes to here, everything else, everything else is going to go up even more. And I think you literally do mean everything else, right? Like, I mean, obviously you think of like meme tokens and like the ICOSAs and the Hedrons and stuff like that to leverage. But I mean, even like HEX, PulseX, Inc. You feel that they all will be harder gainers whenever things really start to pop off, I'm guessing. And I guess like if you could lay out, not necessarily targets, but like maybe an order of how you think the core coins could go, like which ones will be the most bullish, which also may lead us into a conversation about like the eHEX HEX thing, because just over the last few weeks, we've been seeing people take massive chest beating victory laps on being right about HEX, and eHEX is dead, and I don't care if it goes to 0 and all this stuff. But anyway, what do you think about like the other core tokens in their relation to Pulse as it starts to really pop off?
I think the safest and most obvious comment I can make is that PulseX is going to go to parity with Pulse.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically because the buy and burn is drunken sailor just buying this thing up.
Yep.
And so, I mean, I think a lot of people faded PulseX for long enough now that that's kind of the route that's on. So, okay, so whatever Pulse does times 2 is what PulseX is going to do at a minimum, from this level here. And then in terms of like Inc and HEX, I kind of categorize those both as like yield tokens. So I know people want to say HEX is store of value, and Inc monetizes the risk of impermanent loss for farming or for providing liquidity. And so they both have a use case. And I talked a little bit about that today on the Twitter space with the 9-inch guys about how Inc works for the market maker's perspective. But Inc and HEX are going to take turns seesawing. Like when the period when Inc is hot, HEX might not move as fast. When HEX is hot, Inc might not move as fast. I know people are bearish on Inc here because of their thinking about the amount of sell pressure that would come at like $12, $20, $30 a token, and how much overhead that is, network negative externalities or subsidies on the network. But I think they're missing that it's bonded with PulseX and Pulse, and by extension HEX. So you don't get out of that. You don't get out of this with where Inc just goes down forever. Now, does it? Because like, look here, even against Pulse, Inc is still only down 33% against Pulse in any meaningful sort of way. Well, against HEX, Inc is down much, much more. It's down 81% against HEX. So that's what gives a tremendous trade opportunity between Hexicans and the Inc tards. Like they get to pick between that rotation over time, and this is going to be the chart to watch, is the ratio between Inc and HEX, and they're going to duke it out all cycle for dominance. Now that the guys that are farming the most Inc are compounding, and they're always staying ahead of everybody else. So as long as they are good stewards of their golden geese, I don't see why this can't have a rally back the other direction at some point. Inevitably, old Hexican staker class folks are going to want to dump at certain key levels on HEX, which is going to open up an entry point on Inc. Because yeah, I mean, you always hear the same numbers like, oh, I'm dumping at 5-cent HEX, I'm dumping at 10-cent HEX, 20-cent HEX. Like there are going to be key levels where people are going to dump HEX in a big way. And so the only logical rotation is into Inc, which is down bad against it as a hedge. And you can go put that in the farms and wait out the down period for HEX. So they're going to create opportunities for each other. And I think Inc and HEX are going to have the most crazy volatility. The other two are going to be really stable and more of your surefire bets. Now, eHEX is interesting on its own right because it's basically a glorified meme coin at this point that has a staking feature, and it's really just a whale's game in terms of the staking component on the ETH. If you don't have tens of millions of these things on ETH, are you really staking it? Probably not, because you can get higher APR other places on PulseChain with your eHEX. Like you can point to the UFO farms or the farms on 9-inch. There's places to go park your eHEX that's going to pay you better than short-term rollers on eHEX. So that's a consideration to be made. And then eHEX, everyone wants to talk about eHEX versus PHEX and how it's down bad, but that's not really an argument at this point. Yeah, obviously PHEX is kicking the shit out of eHEX. I think everyone can see that. But guys that bought eHEX back here in April are up 2.5x on their Pulse bag. So it's like it's holding its value. It's a store of value. It's in an uptrend against the money market pulse. There's a play here. There's a trade here. Like, and it's obvious. Like, I'm talking to hexicans that are sitting on like double-digit millions of hex that are looking at that ratio at 10-1 on this eHEX to PHEX, and like I have to buy it here. It's just so cheap, and with some of their PHEX, and then even if it just only performs pulse, they're still winning because they're beating the money market.
Yeah, I don't think people are realizing that. I don't think that they've seen it come back against Pulse this well. And this is kind of this is more of like the meta conversation than it is like just the chart. But I am curious what you have to say, because I literally did see somebody, I forget who it even was, but they wouldn't be the first, but somebody said the other day, like, I honestly don't even care if my eHEX holdings would go to zero because we've migrated to a new chain. And I don't think that I don't. Do people just not understand what the consequence of something like that could be? I don't know. That just baffles me.
I don't think they understand optics,
and that it's nearly an impossibility anyway. But so you'd be okay with Richard Hart's initial creation going to zero? You know, I don't understand that.
If anything, it's like, okay, it's a side show. Like if you go to the circus, it's like the clown show on the side. It's the one that all the retail guys on Ethereum and who hear about HEX's crazy gains and PulseChain are going to like, oh, I got to buy HEX right now. And if we get through the case and then Uniswap relists it and they go to MetaMask and they type in HEX, they're going to see eHEX on the Ethereum chain and they're going to buy that. And that's and because of the low liquidity, it's going to spike the price. And so there are Ethereans that have bags of HEX. I think Martini guy is one of them. Came out and said, I have eHEX. I don't have any of the other stuff, but I got that. So there's going to be guys that's going to shill that and try to get people into that. And that's a way for Ethereans to hedge against PulseChain from if things really get crazy and they're just dozens of millions of dollars crossing into our chain. One of their defenses could be to try to make a market on eHEX to try to keep some of that value back, or at least make it competitive so that Ethereum and Pulse can compete on the HEX versus HEX train.
Never thought about it that way. Hey, while we're on this subject, have you heard any updates from Alex from Hedron about the protocol that he was building, supposedly to try and keep things into parity? I know it was supposed to work with Hedron and Icosa, but there was also a little bit of discussion of would it work with eHEX being able to somehow one day stake on PulseChain. Have you heard anything from him lately?
I haven't heard anything. You're talking about Alex?
McWhorter, yeah, because part of what he said, well, yeah, I think part of the mechanism was like if there would be a way to stake eHEX on PulseChain, which would be freaking phenomenal and negate a huge argument by some of these people. Also,
I mean, we could do that. My little team could do that, where we created a contract, or we could even easier leverage my connections with the Fux and 2Fux guys and create a single-sided staking pool. LP pool where it's like 90% eHEX and 10% something else. And then it's basically just eHEX sitting there in a vat. You're not really suffering impermanent loss, and it could pay a really high yield if people get behind it and put their voting power towards it. It's really simple, guys. All it has to do is do better than 15%, and you're doing better than a medium-term HEX stake. So people can come along and create stuff. I mean, I think the main point is like the yield has to be valued. You're not getting HEX on HEX yield in that case, but you could take that yield paying at a higher rate. Let's say it's paying 30% or 50% in Fux and 2Fux tokens. You could take that yield and then dump it for eHEX, which then now you've created a market where maybe the trick here is you do eHEX versus Fux and 2Fux. And it's just primarily eHEX, and then the rewards tokens is making the liquidity deeper for all three tokens at once, because they get to borrow from each other's bonded pairs. So maybe that's the play. If you want to make a market for eHEX, guys, go out and make that pool and get it gauged.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that wouldn't have would be penalties for ending early or not, fulfilling your end of what the contract you made with yourself.
But that's fine, because like there's going to be people that's still going to stake. It's just another alternative. I mean, we could make the fact, I mean, so the idea of like, I think bringing the eHEX staking contract over to PulseChain, I don't even know, is that even possible? I don't know if, how could you get, maybe there would be some sort of a pooling mechanic where you'd go in together on certain dates, and then it would pool the HEX together and make the stake. And when it ended, the gas would be taken care of by part of the yield. And if the stake was big enough, it would be able to compensate for that gas cost. And it would just more be like crowdsourcing staking on the PulseChain side, handling everything. And then it just bridges in and out and does all that through an automated no admin keys contract. I mean, dude, it's limitless what you could build. It's amazing.
Sure.
It seems like what you're saying is you could mimic it in a very specific way. It just may not be, like you're saying, the exact contract of doing the Ethereum way of staking it on PulseChain. You know,
that's right. Because I think that's literally impossible.
Yeah,
you wouldn't be able to. You can't run that. There was times there was talks about creating a where you bridge the SLOD function out to another chain, and then it runs the SLOD calculation over there, and then it brings the data back to the Ethereum chain, and it solves it for cheaper than what it otherwise would be. There was a group of people looking into that at one point, but then you got to think too, like they already have the perpetuals, you have Party, you have Communis, you have other stuff that can help pay the gas fees and try to make look. PHEX is what, to use HEX in its purest form, PHEX on PulseChain. That's the way to do it. 100%.
Yep.
Yeah, agreed. You're still taking flyers on eHEX, I'm assuming, or are you comfortable doing it? I mean, we've seen a couple people in the chat tonight talk about they're still dipping their toes in and scooping some up here and there, and I've been doing it too. Are you still interested in doing that, or just kind of holding what you've got because you already probably have a good bid? So.
I got eHEX. I've got more eHEX than PHEX, and so I'm comfortable with it. I mean, it's pretty cheap down here, but look, there's a bunch of good plays on PulseChain right now that are just, you know, there's too many good things to buy. So it's like, yeah, I haven't been buying lately, but if this breaks down against Pulse, I would be interested.
Yeah.
Now, am I going to drive it down there? No. Is somebody else? Probably. I know a whole bunch of people that want to see this thing fail. So sure, drive it down, try to break that trend.
Yeah. And again, that
maybe
another thing to make it healthier.
You know, maybe BankEx will get it down here and finish off their position, and then that's the reversal point. Like buying eHEX before BankEx is out is why it's discounted so badly. Once they're completely out, the whole narrative can change like a snap of a finger.
Yeah, and that's what I think will happen. I think it's going to get smacked up big time after that takes place. Maybe like way later in the cycle. Like it probably will be. Like, you know, we need a lot of time for this to clear out, but I think there's definitely space for that to happen. You mentioned Communis a minute ago. I know you've been a big fan of this. You've talked about it a lot. I've seen some chatter in the chat about it tonight as it being one of those leverage tokens. We just mentioned ICOSA and Hedron, two tokens obviously built on top of HEX to incentivize long-term staking. Communis, similar thing. Talk about it a little bit. Again, I know you're a big fan, and what we could see go on with Communis and any info you have on it.
Mm-hmm. So I like Communis because it's a way to pay people to stake for a really long time, which creates value for everybody else that's still in the system. I think I always have to start this conversation by making the disclaimer that, look, guys, max length staking all of your HEX is not the play. With that said, there is a play to be made where if the community gets behind Communis and Communis appreciates in value, as you can see here, it's breaking out of a 381% range currently. That's been stuck in this range since, well, I mean, virtually since 398 days of sideways inside of here. And that's like a 4.5x range where you could have been 4xing your HEX stack, you know, and buying back the dip, 4xing your HEX stack, buying the dip. Now it starts to look, now it's looking like it's trending and it's in a parabolic advance. And that's important because if COM is more valuable, guys that stake for longer than 10 years get back an instant rebate. And so by buying COM, you're basically putting your vote toward more long-term staking behavior. And eventually this gets so valuable, potentially, if it's adopted right in the right way, it gets so valuable that people can get back 15, 20, 30% of their value for a 15-year commitment. And if it's like, if there's a HEX shark out there that's got $50 million in HEX, what's it to them to put $1 million of HEX out for 15 years as a hedge just to get back maybe 30% back, 300 grand? Like, that'd be cool. You got 300 grand to Communis back, but we got a guy to put $1 million of HEX out for 15 years. And if you can make the calm liquidity deep enough and robust enough and make the price appreciate to a level that's juicy and makes people want to play the long-term game and pay them to do it, that sounds like a pretty good proposition. It's automatic marketing at its finest. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of this, and I'm friends with the dev, and he helped build out the Axis Alive Fusion contract, which is launching this week. That's going to be an amplifier for the COM price, because I can't affect, with my little Axis Alive token, I can't affect the price of HEX, but what we can do is we can bond it to COM, prove it mechanically, and then bond it to COM, and then if successful, then it'll give people more liquidity when they go long. So it's pretty basic. It's an instant rebate for staking for a long time.
Sweet. Why don't you go in a little bit, because I know you obviously want to touch on it with it launching this week, but what do you want to talk about the Alive token and everything that is going on with that here for a moment? Yeah.
So just like in HEX, when you stake HEX for a long time, you get COM back in 2 payouts. You get a start payout, or start bonus, and an end bonus. Start bonus you get immediately, and the end bonus you get upon maturity. And so Axis Alive works in the same way. Axis is committed through a contract for a maximum of 8 years. No admin keys, immutable. Starts with zero Alive tokens. The only way that Alive comes into existence is because it was minted from Axis tokens. But the difference is that in HEX is hyperinflationary. The principal and the yield always comes back to the user. But in this system, if Axis Alive, it's a lock and burn, so that you're locking half of your deposit for the length of your commitment, up to 8 years, and then you're burning the other half of your deposit. And so then that start and end payouts combined, the sum of that of Alive is basically where the burned value went. So it's literally showing you proportionally. It's trying to take market cap from now, convert it into something else, and create demand for both Alive and for COM through the instant rebate mechanic. Maybe we play a video for him, and then we can touch on it a little more.
Yeah, go ahead. I think I saw you play that on Corey's last week. Yeah, go ahead.
Should be good.
Oh, let me pull this one down and.
Who's your graphics guy? We got to hire this guy.
Yeah, dude. Markable.
Very
dude.
nice. Yeah.
He's the best, dude. You could say that he's on the team. He's on payroll. By the way, as we're looking at this, Bitcoin is hitting all-time highs as we're speaking.
Yes, it is. Right up at about
95,000. Wow. Yeah, I've seen this kind of price action before, and it just keeps going up, where it gets this kind of curve on it, and I can show you exactly where. It was back in 2020 or 2019 or 2020. I think it was 2020.
2020, early.
Right here. And when we went going to 20K. Right here. So this was at 12.5K. And you just got that nice curve. Kind of doing the same thing now. And that just goes, it can be pretty crazy. Like let's try to throw a bars pattern on it. Oh no. Oh, there it is. Okay. So let's condense it down and see that. So it's happening quicker.
Yeah.
And it's way more parabolic. But yeah, this is kind of what it's doing. It's the same pattern, but it's just happening way quicker. So, I mean, this is basically saying 108K. I was thinking we'd hit like 109 to 112 on the next push. And that would be that. Then that would be 109, chop around there until end of November. And then maybe we imagine hitting 120 before the end of the year, and then we crash.
Boy, that would be insane.
That would freak a lot of people out.
It probably would, but I mean, who's expecting it to go that high that quickly? You know what I mean? Like that would just be such a huge move. It's like it would freak people out, but I mean, I think the people that are sharp in this game would know, like, well, look what we just did. You know, we're due for a pullout. And I think like Trump, you know, that could kind of coincide, like Trump actually getting sworn in, some of like the hype and the short-term stuff dying off a little bit before we get hot again later. I think that could make a lot of sense.
What up, Yellowtail? I see in there. Yeah, boy. So this would be their 35% drop back to where we're at now, right?
Yeah.
That's that, you know, correction I was talking about. And then what happens is maybe you get another. I would love to see this, man. You just get this thing again. And it'll be bigger though, right? So that it'll be amplified in size. Maybe it's something like this. And so then what does that look like? It's a cup and handle again, and you're getting a max 50% drawdown. But probably it'll more try to just stay above that 88,000 level with lows into the 75,000s. That's totally Bitcoin style correction. Let me go zoom out now. Yeah, that's kind of what I've been saying I wanted anyway, was just another leg up and then a sideways period. And then this is really setting up nicely for that parabola that you guys, that the regular cycle folks are looking for.
Mm-hmm.
You know, something like this.
Us regular folk.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't mean you guys. You guys are a cut above the rest.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's not out of the question, guys. Look at how this just looks vertical. But when we zoomed back in on that 4 hour, it's really this pattern recognition of that first curvature when we broke out after 12.5K.
Yeah.
We're reliving it.
Yeah. It's beautiful. I mean, I think this is why people are getting so bullish right now, is we're seeing this violent move right now, like earlier than expected. You know, like I said in that Bob Lucas video earlier today, talking about pushing this deeper, going higher this cycle. Yeah. I mean, it just looks bullish all around. We didn't really touch on this, and I think because I'm frankly kind of sick of it, but I mean, maybe just to get your take as we round off here. I know I kind of have a hard stop here at 8 o'clock, but what do you feel about we got really bullish news, obviously, on the RH court case with the corrupt SEC from back on when was that even? That was Halloween. Wow. When that took place, you know, at this point, everybody's like seeing the transcripts, like seeing everything that Judge Carroll and the attorneys on both sides went over. There's been like awesome role plays of it and AI versions of it and stuff like that you can listen to. It's been really good. So what's kind of your takeaway on what do you think may happen? Now, again, I don't really think any result's going to affect the price all that much, other than maybe short-term swings. I think we're going to do what we're going to do in this cycle, and that's just going to be the way it is, kind of how you already laid out. But just, you know, for the argument and to see what's going to happen with this case, what do you think we may get news-wise? Are you looking at like, oh, there's going to be a total dismissal? Is she going to say, well, you know, they brought this suit forward, we're still going to hear it, even though you guys seem like you don't really know what you're talking about, we're going to move forward? Partial dismissal? What do you think we're going to see here? So
this is my total speculation and unprofessional legal opinion, is that we're going to see the SEC pull the suit because they're standing on freaking shaky ground. They don't have any good claims. Their draft is trash, and it got completely dismantled in the hearing. And I don't see how they would want to take that to trial on any of the counts that they're trying to go after. Whether it be on the fraud point, which is one of my favorites to talk about, because look, if Richard basically came out and said, hey, you are sacrificing for a political movement. You are giving your coins away. You are getting 0 coins back. You're not getting your coins back. You are giving them away for the freedom of speech, and then for the freedom of movement, and thus implied as for the freedom to transact. And if they were to try to rule on that and say that Richard did intend to use those sacrifice funds for the development of PulseChain, which was never said, there was a no expectations disclaimer, then they're basically saying that guy, first of all, said something he didn't say, and that they can also tell him what he can and cannot do with his money, as well as us as participants in it saying what we can and cannot do with our money. And so they're very going after that fraud point as infringing on our freedom to transact, which is why we've sacrificed for that political movement in the first place. And so it's like he's got them triangulated in their crosshair, and like there's no way that it can go on that fraud case. Then you get the issue of jurisdiction, which is like, well, he's broadcasting this globally to everyone in the world, and the SEC doesn't have the power to rule over, you know, globally, right? They only have within our national borders, and so it wasn't directed at American citizens. I mean, he just, you know, speaks publicly on a public forum online, and anybody's free to interact in the way they see fit. You can't take away people's rights to be free and do free things, right? And so the jurisdictional part kind of you know, broke down when the lawyer asked, you know, well, where's the blockchain? Where does the blockchain live?
Yeah.
And of course, they make all these claims about where the money was sent from, and that all that is irrelevant. That's not that has no bearing on the outcome. And then there was like the problem with the chronology of it. Like, you know, I was there, and it's just so funny because like they kept conflating different time periods with different things Richard said over the course of time, and they had all their facts wrong when it came to the adoption amplifier for HEX and this offering for these other sacrifices. It's just their timeline was so messed up, and they had a big bulletin board, which RG3 won at the seminar day. He won the bulletin board that they had the chronology on, where it's just like, this was cool. Wrong, this was wrong, this was wrong, and the timing of it.
You guys all autographed that, didn't you?
I think we did. I think we did. Yeah,
that's cool.
And here's Frank saying that Nuclear Herbs gave the bottom line breakdown that eased my mind about the lawsuit. And I got the pleasure of meeting him, talking to him, and then being on stage with him at the seminar and talking a little bit about these ideas. And it just seems like he and I both agree that they just don't really have a very strong case. And Richard's lawyers basically dismantled them.
Yeah. That's the take I got. Could you tell in the judges, like, I know they're trained to not give facial expressions too much, but was she like rolling her eyes at these guys at all? Like, could you tell her giving any of those vibes? Like, guys, you got nothing. And I know she corrected him a couple times, and just by reading the transcript and seeing it play out by the couple people that kind of reenacted it and the AI one.
Yeah, I think maybe you could have picked up very subtly on some of her frustrations where the SEC was talking in circles, but no, she didn't really let up too much. You had to be pretty perceptive to pick up on those. It was more just like when they had no good reply, she would move on to the next point, or she would ask the next question.
I think you could tell even from watching a role play or listening to or just reading the transcript, she definitely was grilling them about, because it's embarrassing. Like they dropped the alter ego thing, which, I mean, it should have never been in there to begin with, but you could tell she had to like push and push and push this guy until he admitted like, essentially what we're trying to say is that's not part of the case anymore, you know? So yeah,
thank you for bringing that part up. Yeah, that was important. That was, they dropping that in the first opening statements was like, I was like, what did he just,
right?
What are you guys doing here?
Yeah. And it was the way he went about it too. Like, he didn't just confidently say it. She had to like pull it out of him, you know, over a few steps. So I found that really interesting. And I tell you what you're saying here about the SEC pulling it, I mean, there is at least increasing possibility of that happening with the things that are now, you know, things we couldn't have said 3 weeks ago. We've got a Trump presidency. He's already floating her name's Teresa Goody Guillen, I believe. She was with the SEC before. She's an attorney now. She is pro crypto, but Trump was already trying to tab her as the new head of the SEC. Gary's already pretty much drafted like a "I'm out of here" type statement or something like that. So I think there could be real validity to that. I guess we're just going to have to see how these things play out time-wise. But, I mean, worst case scenario, and Frank in the chat, you kind of laid this out a minute ago. Nuclear Herbs, I think, is setting us all at ease because even he was like, hey, worst case scenario here is like this thing continues on. There's not a dismissal, or there's probably a partial dismissal, and this just ends up in a settlement eventually, and we're done. You know, this isn't anything that's going to, there isn't going to be like the SEC 1 type of a scenario. And if it was, it would just be that they were able to shake down Richard, which is what this all is anyway, you know?
Yeah.
So cool. Any other final thoughts on that? It's cool to get insights from people who are actually there, you know?
Yeah, I think everyone walked out of there and just knew that we were in a really good place.
Cool. Well, tell you what, anything else you kind of wanted to mention or go over, Axis? Got a lot of good stuff here this evening.
Well, we've talked about a lot of topics, a lot of cycle theory tonight, which I thought was pretty cool.
I agree.
I always enjoy going through that with you guys. PDI, PTGC, PRAP, BTC, they're all mooning.
I wish we would have had more
Teddy
time.
Bear, PTGC, UFO. These are some of the assets I'm looking at on PulseChain. Of course, I like our assets. I like Axis. I like SolidX. And today, SolidX, you got a massive liquidity boost. There was about, I want to say, $1.1 million of ink paired with SolidX, which is now makes SolidX even more of a lever on the ink price. So if ink is going to moonshot, this is a really, really nice setup. So if I zoom out here on like a daily on SolidX, for example, maybe go to a linear chart. This is what you kind of get is this falling wedge that's broken out, and it's like a textbook retest. So this is SolidX measured in ink terms, sitting on $1.1 million of ink. Resistance, grind through resistance, breakout, retest, and now so far we popped off that with huge volumes. So that's a technical setup. You know, you can take that trade or you can not take that trade. That's up to you guys. But SolidX looks to have played out that bullish divergence that's been playing out, and you got the signal from the big man himself when he paired $1 million of ink from his farms into SolidX today and gave liquidity to anybody left that wants to exit the market, and it opens up a doorway for a whale to come in with size and not eat so much slippage. And that,
I know SolidX. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, that gives all of SolidX's bonded pairs a lot of extra liquidity as well. And obviously there's more than just SolidX as part of this kind of liquidity web. SolidX is also heavily bonded to PDI, PRAP, BTC, Inc., Axis token. So it's a pretty robust market now at this point that can actually stack up to things like UFO, PTGC, and it's getting closer bonded. Now I will say the webs are growing through collaboration. Like Axis has like $150,000 pair with PTGC, $150,000 pair with UFO, and then SolidX is paired with PDI and PRAP BTC in a big way, and back to the 9-inch tokens like BBC. So you can actually watch the liquidity webs on these tokens and see how they're starting to flourish and create more surface area laterally to set up for a really nice base going into this next wave of this bull market.
Was that you that was showing those on I forget what stream I was watching, but the actual webs? We'll have to do that on the next time we have you on.
Yeah, this is it here.
Pretty cool. It's very cool to see how things are broken out into what's the liquidity with all the different things and how they're broken down. But
I can just do last thing before we go. I'll just do the solid index tokens and do a little example. This is the web so far that's kind of in the solid index here. So if I zoom in, like, okay, Pulse is like the major central point, obviously, with $250 million of bonded liquidity. Then you get like the Atropa ecosystems. You got like Atropa, Teddy Bear, Down, PRAP, BTC, PUSDC, PDI. PDAI's got $64 million of it. 44 million of it's just with Latropa, which some people might say that's not real liquidity, but there's still like, $5 to $10 million of decent liquidity with PDAI.
Mm-hmm.
And then with other RH coins, UFO with a crazy 12.8 million, PTGC with 11 million, SolidX now has 5 million. So yeah, I mean, you can use hexfire.io to pull these all apart and collapse them and connect them and see how these all create. These are like the stable assets on the chain at this point. So it's pretty amazing.
Pretty cool.
It is awesome. And man, I'm so glad that you mentioned some of that other stuff. I mean, the things that are going on like with PDAI, with PWBTC right now and stuff. I mean, they're I know Sami's been talking about them a shitload. Not that other people haven't for a year and a half at this point, but I mean, just the chart does not look like a mistake on some of those. And boy,
I'm starting to feel like, I mean, I've been wishy-washy on whether the peg was going to be a thing or not, but at this point, like, you don't make a chart like that and there's just no intention behind it. So somebody's got capital has a mission, right?
Yeah. They're exciting to watch. And honestly, I don't feel too afraid to dip into them. It's not like a random meme that somebody made or whatever. Like, I feel fairly confident adding those as like a riskier part of my portfolio,
but does it feel risky? Like, okay, here's my like little liquidity bonds with SolidX right now. Well, what happened when I pull off PDAI off to the side here and I just draw all of its branch connections? Does that feel risky to you? This is already filtering out. This is filtering out anything that did less than $5,000 of volume and less than 10,000 in TVL. So these are all like the meaningful pairs for PDAI.
Mm-hmm.
Filtering out the trash. You start doing that with like PTGC and SolidX and Axis, and it's like, okay, so there's obviously that to me reduces risk because there's a lot of people that believe in it. There's a network effect occurring there. So I would encourage people to not be jaded and have preconfined notions. I had a meeting with a guy today that was like, should I just buy the PDAI at this price? Because he's wanted to buy it for a while and he's watched it go up and up and up. And it's like, well, wait till Herman dumps the rest of his bag, maybe. But then again, here we are testing the all-time highs.
Right.
Yeah.
So
we're at the point now that I don't know when you're going to get in. You know what I mean? It's just flip a coin at this point, you're
look
still
at this on the 3-day. Oh my God. Yeah. It's like, and it's like 160x from $1. It's if Pulse does a 10x, then you're 16x from $1 against Pulse. So it's really however well Pulse performs, PDAI doesn't have to do so much against Pulse at that point. So they're going to seesaw their way up as they both go up in value. It's going to be very interesting to watch, and it's going to create more of these, opportunities where you can capture the range, right? So back here, was the reality at one point, was this, right? And that looked pretty scary, but this was your range down here. And then it broke out, and then it went parabolic, it felt like, right? And it broke the highs, and then you did another one of those ranges, and now your range has been in here. And now that's breaking out, and like your big liabilities are starting to leave. So it's now is this the next price discovery? I don't know.
Or you might get another dip that's very similar to that, but a lot less. So that's the pattern that's somewhat playing out.
I think
it could be interesting. If you're gonna get it, you might as well do it now or wait for a little dip. But when
if you get even a 30% pullback, and you want in anything that you really want in, I would be firing at that point. Like, that's where we're at right now, So
I think the last thing is like, Frank is asking you, Ewok, do you ever feel like you're channeling Gandalf?
I saw that. Well, with Gandalf comes a lot of wisdom, I feel like. That's not really an insult. That's definitely
definitely not an insult.
Compliment. So
I think the insult would have been saying they're Gandalf the Grey.
Yeah, right.
Good stuff.
So maybe after this bull run, you evolve into Gandalf the White.
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah, that'd be a good look for you. Actually, it's starting to come in already a little wee bit, just around the edges there.
Bit.
We got a couple grays sticking out. Well, this has been awesome, Axis. Yeah, man. And I agree with what you said too about like really looking at the cycle theory and stuff like that. We went into that deeper than we usually do tonight. So that was awesome to hear. So obviously let everybody know where they can find you and everything you got going on. I don't know if you're going to be on streaming it up more over the next couple weeks or where you're going to be.
Yeah, so definitely going to want to keep your eyes on my Twitter account for the next maybe 100 hours, I don't know, 90 hours. Just keep your eyes peeled. We're really close to revealing and launching fully the amplifier for the HEX Confusion. So that'll be accessalive.app coming to mainnet soon. Farms are coming for it. We think we've got something really special there. A disruptive technology. And it's built on top of Axis, which has had incredible price performance for over a year and a half. So excited to get that out the door. If you want to know more about me, go to accessalive.com or message me. You know, if you can get to me, I like to keep the gates up, but if you can get to me, find somebody that can get to me and then message me on x.com/accessalive. And yeah, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Hope everyone enjoyed the stream. It was action packed as usual.
Yeah. Good stuff. Sweet, man. Well, appreciate you. Appreciate everybody in the chat. I would shout them out, but we got too many to count tonight. We got 150 right now. So we appreciate all you guys. Thank you for the super chats. We do this every Wednesday night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So for Mr. Axis Alive, Crypto Ewok, this has been Broke Boy Crypto. Catch you guys next week, day before Thanksgiving, right here on the Creed of Crypto live stream. See you guys.
See you.